Hi everyone, it's Halloween and I wanted to do something a little different for my Halloween special and make it a storytime video, but not just one storytime, multiple of them. None of them are Broadway related and they're all from my early childhood years, like preschool, kindergarten, first grade, baby years. Yeah, like stuff like that, like nothing recent. But I'm gonna do a storytime video about random stuff that scared me as a kid because I was a weird kid and I was scared of a lot of things and I don't know why. But I got the idea from this video because the other day my mom sent me a picture of something that scared me as a kid that I thought I blocked out years ago, but I got like so many flashbacks after seeing that picture and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do a video. And yeah, so I'll explain the many random things that scared me when I was really young, and I'll tell you a story related to each one. So, this one's a common fear for little kids, but I was scared of getting shots at the doctor's office, so I got really sick a lot as a toddler, and I would have to go to the hospital multiple times a month, and I would get a lot of shots that would literally hurt for only a minute. I hated seeing that needle go into my arm and the feeling of blood being sucked out, and I called shots pinches when I was little, and I would cry when I would have to get one. I literally sat on my dad's lap when I had to get a shot at the doctor's until I was 10. So next we have one of the weirder ones. So when I was in preschool and kindergarten, I would go to a play group after school every Wednesday. We would play games and play with toys and do crafts as well. So when I was like 4 or 5, I was at playgroup one day and we were playing with toy musical instruments like drums and maracas, and I saw this weird green instrument with a creepy looking face. I picked it up and the leader of playgroup was like, "That's not a musical instrument!" And I looked closely at it and it turned out to be a game called Pass the Pickle. It was this hot potato type game with pickle instead of a potato, and it played really weird sounding music, and the face freaked me out and the playgroup leader had to hide it. The toy reminded me of if Larry the Cucumber from VeggieTales, which was one of my favorite shows as a kid, had an evil brother. A couple months later, the Christmas toy catalogs were starting to come in the mail. I used to be like really obsessed with looking at the toy catalogs as a kid. I was so excited to see all the new toys and start making my Christmas list. When I opened up a toy catalog for this one store that no longer exists called Jack Rabbit Toys, I saw that creepy pickle on the first page and I immediately started crying and my mom threw out the catalog. So next year when I was 5, I was at playgroup and the leader opened up the curtain in the game room to find the game that we were going to play that day. I spotted that creepy thing again in the back of the closet and ran into the bathroom because the game room was right next to the bathroom. After seeing that monstrosity again, I decided that it was the end of playgroup for me. So next Wednesday after kindergarten, I pretended that I gotten sick on the bus on the way back from school so that I couldn't go to playgroup. I remember my mom being really confused why I was acting weird that day because I remember not telling my mom about the second pickle incident. Like, maybe I told her later, I don't really remember. Maybe I told her later on. I don't really remember this part, and like, my mom was wondering why I didn't want to go to playgroup because I used to love going there as a kid, and I vividly remember right after school that day instead of playgroup because I pretended to be sick. I remember my mom turning on Nick Jr. and Backyardigans was on, and I remember it was that Alien episode with that one song that was like, almost everything is going on. And then after the episode, I don't really remember what happened next, so that's the end of the story, but after that day, I never went to that playgroup again. So the next story also involved a toy, but it was actually a toy I liked, but there was something about it that scared me, and you'll see why. So when I was a kid, I was fascinated by electronic toys, like those toy computers and those toy phones and like stuff like that, like mainly ones by like Leapfrog and VTech. And one day our old neighbors came to our house to give us a huge garbage bag of lots of hand-me-down toys their kids grew out of. And there's all kinds of stuff in that trash bag, like Mr. Potato Head, Zuzu Pets, puzzles, educational toys, a tool bench, this weird tree toy that I was also scared of, but it was broken, so I didn't know what it did, but it still scared me because I was a weird kid, and I have no idea why, and I don't even remember the name of that toy. It was like a tree with like frogs. But there was this one toy at the bottom of the trash bag that really fascinated 6-year-old me because it was a VTech toy. It was this red toy that looked kind of similar to a computer keyboard, but it had like an odd, like circular-ish, oval-ish shape. It was called an Alphabet Town. I pressed the big yellow power button, and there was a loud sound that sounded like the bellow of a fire truck, and a weird voice that was like, "Hi kids, welcome to Alphabet Town." Which I will attach a clip of it, just so you know, like, how weird the voice was, because it was weird.
Hi kids, welcome to Alphabet Town. Have music fun.
I was kind of startled at first, then I warmed up to it, and it was like a toy that taught you like phonics and spelling and that kind of stuff. My favorite part was like the music button that played like video game sounding arrangements of nursery rhyme songs. I remember one of my little cousins really liking the toy too. Then one day, the toy was at the bottom of the toy box. I forgot to tell you this, but the power button was like very sensitive. When something hit in the toy box, the toy would turn on. And I remember finding a toy in the toy box in our childhood playroom, and out of nowhere, I hear, "Hi kids, welcome to Alphabet Town," in that creepy voice, really loud, and I started crying. My mom asked me why I was scared, and I said that it was loud, and we turned down the volume, and it was still loud, because I don't know why, I just remember it being still loud, like when we turned down the volume. But it was actually the voice that scared me for some reason. But luckily, I remember smelling a weird smell one day that I thought was coming from the kitchen because it smelled like burnt food in the stove. It smelled like burnt food in the stove. But later, we found out it was coming from the toy box, and it was coming from the Alphabet Town, to be exact. Turns out the batteries inside that thing rusted and it stopped working. I remember being so happy the day we had to throw that thing out. I later had a VTech Globe that had a similar sounding voice to the Alphabet Town, but I was a little older, so I wasn't scared of it. I still hate that burning food smell to this day, and I always get Alphabet Town flashbacks when I smell something weird in the kitchen. So the next story, yes, most of these involve toys, was another pretty weird one because I still don't know why I was scared of this. Like, I actually have no idea why I was scared of this as a kid. Like, it's like nothing scary at all, and it's like, yeah, but, so the story was, when I was in first grade, I was really into dolls. When I had a great week in first grade, my mom would reward me with something like a Barbie, a Monster High, a Lala Loopsy, or an American Girl doll outfit. This was also the time I was really into One Direction, so one week my mom got me a singing Niall doll because Niall was my favorite. I remember getting the doll and pressing the button once. He sang What Makes You Beautiful, which was my favorite song at the time. I listened to it on my iPod all the time, and I even had a Build-A-Bear that sang that song, and I pressed the button over and over again, and I cried when it stopped working. But I don't know why I was scared of the doll, because I cried and I started begging my mom to return the doll. We never even opened it and get me something else. She eventually did return it and got me a Monster High instead, but I forget which one it was. So this connects to something else I was scared of, which is another common fear of little kids, which was singing stuffed animals. Not all of them for some reason, but most of them. All my childhood Build-A-Bears used to sing, and I loved them, but I had a few Leapfrog interactive stuffed toys as a baby also, that I also loved. This is one of my worst fears, but not the worst. I'm saving that one for last. I remember quite a few stories relating to this fear, but I'm going to explain 2 of these stories. So the first one was when I was in kindergarten. On the day before Christmas break, my class had show and tell, and the theme was to bring in your favorite Christmas ornament or decoration. I brought this small stuffed white cat ornament that we still put on our tree every year, but a girl in my class brought in this weird-looking singing and dancing Christmas tree with a face called a Rocking Robbie. When it was her turn for show and tell, I was luckily the first one to go that day. I begged my classroom para to take me to the bathroom, which I had a para from kindergarten all the way to 6th grade, and until she was finished showing her toy. I luckily didn't see the tree in action, but when I got back from the bathroom, it was the next kid's turn. He brought in a stuffed Rudolph that I didn't know sang. I was very freaked out by it, and I begged my parent to take me a walk around the school until show and tell was over. So the second story was actually around the same time. I was also 6, and the toy catalog from Target that year had a singing Mickey Mouse and a singing Elmo right next to each other on the cover. I didn't even want to look at them, even though I loved Sesame Street for a long time, and I watched Mickey Mouse Clubhouse with my brother sometimes. So I ripped the cover off the catalog, and you would think that was the end of the story. Well, it was not. So 2 days later, my family went to one of my cousin's second birthday parties. They recently got a new house, and I remember checking out their new playroom. Right in the back of the room, I saw not one, but both of those toys from the catalog. I ran away fast and cried to my aunt to hide the Mickey and the Elmo in the closet, so I didn't see them in action. I also remember being scared of a few singing Christmas decorations at the same aunt's house she would hide in that same closet. So the next one was another really random one. So when I was 7, I remember seeing the trailers for Monsters University all the time on Disney Channel. I would always hide when they came on because I was scared of the purple monster art, and I don't know why, and it was another short-lived fear because I eventually watched the movie a year later and everything was fine. So, the last childhood fear, my biggest fear of all as a little girl, was the show Yo Gabba Gabba. So back in 2007, I was watching Nick Jr. It was still Noggin at the time, but I'll call it Nick Jr. because most of you watching probably remember the channel as Nick Jr. because a lot of my subscribers are younger than me, and I was still pretty young when it changed from Noggin to Nick Jr., but I still remember it being Noggin because I was like 5 when they changed it to Nick Jr., I think. And I remember I was watching Nick Jr. and my little blue polka dot chair I would always watch TV in, like as a toddler. I was 2 years old, and this was before my brothers were born, and this was one of my earliest memories. Like, I think maybe my earliest memory, I don't even know. But I remember watching shows like Dora and Wab Wab Wubsy and Backyardigans and Blue's Clues and stuff like that on Nick Jr. So one day, this brand new show that I'd never seen before was on, and my parents were like, "What's this?" We turned on the show, and there was this weird green fuzzy monster singing about food. I immediately cried and hid behind my chair because that freaky monster really scared the flip out of me. Scared the flip out of 2-year-old me. I was 2, by the way. So I started watching Nick Jr. on TV less and less, and I started watching like PBS Kids and Sprout and Playhouse Disney more. Even though I still watch shows on Nick Jr., I mostly watch Nick Jr. shows on DVD because of that freaking show. I still don't understand why that show was made for little kids in the first place, even though I do know a few people who loved it as a kid for some reason, because all the show was just creepy people in creepy monster costumes dancing and singing annoying songs. It was basically like the creepy version of Sesame Street. So a year later, in 2008, I was 3. My dad took me to my first ever parade, as well as the only Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade I saw in person, because I've watched it on TV every year since I was young, but I started liking the Macy's parade more when I started becoming obsessed with Broadway. But that was the only time I saw it 2008 was the only time that I saw it in person and not on TV. I barely remember anything about that parade besides the Sesame Street float, which I loved, and the YGG float. I remember seeing that float and hiding behind my dad until the float disappeared. And I was crying a lot. As the years went by, the show started coming on less and less. It used to come on multiple times a day, then it started only coming on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which I would make sure the TV was not on Nick Jr., on which this actually was around the time of the Noggin to Nick Jr. rebrand, and if I was watching TV at the time, or if my brother was, or if my parents were, I would make sure it was on a different channel, like Playhouse Disney or Sprout, so I wouldn't see that show. Also, I loved watching the toy commercials on TV, and even when a show I liked was on Nick Jr., they would still constantly play commercials or clips from that show, and I'd run and hide. Another story I almost forgot about was back when I was in kindergarten and 1st grade, I was in a Girl Scout Daisy troop. Our meetings were usually in my old elementary school art room, but one day it was at the library instead, because the art room was being taken already, by another, an after-school art class thing. So, at my old elementary school library, there was stuffed animals of popular book and TV show characters on top of each of the bookshelves in my old elementary school library, and one of the bookshelves had a stuffed animal of that creepy green monster on the top. I remember my first day of library in kindergarten being freaked out by it, and the school librarian would hide in her closet whenever my class was coming. So a year later, I was in 1st grade. I had a Daisy meeting after school, but the art room was being used for an after-school art class, so instead the meeting was held at the library. When I went in, my class did not have library that day. The monster was in the spot I remembered seeing him on my first ever library day in kindergarten. Luckily, the librarian was working after hours that day and hid him, and when the meetings were changed from Tuesdays to Fridays, since I was really happy because my library days in 1st grade were on Fridays, and we would be able to have the art room and never had the library again, which we actually didn't have the library again. Then the next year in 2nd grade, the show disappeared off the Nick Jr. schedule, and I never saw it again until my mom sent me a picture of that freaking monster 2 days ago. So those are my weird childhood fears. Hope you enjoyed, and comment what weird fears you had as a kid.